So,
Anyway, this is wonderful opportunity to really bring out a lot about what we all work on, which is trying to advance the cause of peace, and it doesn't seem to ever end. But your story is just so rich and just is illustrates what so many people went through. So I'd love to give you kind of free reign to kind of start at the beginning and talk about your experience uh, with being drafted
hmm
and
okay,
the whole ball of wax. And we'll start with that.
okay. Born in Jersey City, New Jersey. Um, don't want to go too much in the background of that, but I lived in the housing projects in Jersey City, and out of about 15 guys I grew up with, 11 of us got drafted.
Mm.
Seven of us went to Vietnam, and only four of us came back. And that was during what they call the poverty draft. A lot of people don't know that they were taking people indiscriminately. Well, not indiscriminately, but they were targeting, young, in particular, young African American and poor whites as well. And they were sending us out to be cannon fodder for the war. To give you an example of that, I got drafted June 22nd, 1967, and I was in Vietnam for Thanksgiving dinner.
Mm-hmm.
it's not right.
So, I mean, it was, like just a whirlwind thing. Didn't seem like as soon as I stepped in the service, I was in. Matter of fact, I only had two duty stations. One was at Fort Dix, New Jersey, where I had infantry training and AIT training, which involved quartermaster, which was supplies, and Vietnam. They were my two duty stations. So I didn't know anything about conscientious objection. I had saw some of the protests against the war. I didn't pay much attention to it. Seemed like a lot of white people to me. It just never really resonated in my community. And no one in my community came and organized us to tell us there were options to go into the military. The one thing I didn't want to do was go to jail. And that was paramount for me. I didn't want to go to jail. So, you know, initially going into the military, I played sports in high school. So it was a lot of physical training and stuff like that, which seemed to be like fun. You ran a bunch of guys, just like in football camp or something like that. You ran a bunch of guys, and you know, um, we're gonna say going into Vietnam, I didn't know much about what was going on in Vietnam. I didn't know anything about the culture of the Vietnamese people. I didn't know anything about the historical stuff. When you go through training, they primarily make you feel like these folks are ignorant, that we're here to save them. They don't have an intellect, um, and they demean them at every chance they can get. They demean them, and so you go in thinking, very negatively about Vietnamese people, because I've never met any. So you think very negatively about them. So, me showing up in Vietnam, um, I didn't really know too much about anything. Like I said, I got there in for Thanksgiving dinner, and I think in a couple of months they had a Tet Offensive, which was like all hell broke loose. Um, I was guarding I was in supplies, but our company was responsible for guarding the ammunition dump, for guarding class one the food and field depots. So we were on guard. When Tet broke out, they blew up the ammunition dump, which I was guarding at the time. And I remember seeing the mushroom go up in the air. Like they always tell you, you'll see it before you hear it. And sure enough, man, we saw the mushroom go up. We jumped into an APC, which is an Army personnel carrier. and it's lifted to carry off the ground, but smoked a lot of marijuana in Vietnam. That sort of calmed my nerves and got me through everything. And I think a lot of folks, folks I knew, that's what you did. If you didn't smoke marijuana, you drank. And I remember initially coming in, and a good friend of mine, and I had never used any kind of drugs before I went to Vietnam. I was playing sports, and I never had any drugs. I never really had no real experience with marijuana. And I remember trying to act like I knew something, but I didn't. I just heard a lot of stuff about it. But this cook took me up in the back of the company area, a place they call Smoky Mountain. And, I say that to say that my friend who was with me, we went through everything together, trained, basic everything together. We both started smoking. It made me levitate. I saw colors and all that stuff. He was terrified. He said he'll never want to do it again. So he started drinking. And another thing about that they don't talk much about what happens in the military, but military makes sure that you create some bad habits for yourself as a young person. You could buy in Vietnam, you could buy a fifth of vodka for $1. So my man would get 2/5 of vodka, and you get about a 6-ounce can of bluebird orange juice, and be very upset when he ran out of orange juice, like somebody drank his orange juice. But anyway, um, that set the foundation of what we did. We drank and got high, to sort of survive. Um, During Tet, I had made sure that, like, hey, and my thing was this: the way they told us, we would come into our company area and we would get the menial jobs, cleaning latrines, cleaning out latrines, and burning feces and all the little menial jobs. And then when the recruits next recruits became, they would get them jobs and we would get bumped up to better jobs, like working in the office or driving vehicles and so forth and so on. These were the black GIs, so.
What base was this,
This
Greg?
was in Long Binh, Vietnam.
Okay.
Long Binh, so um, we in the beginning, I tried to do what I was supposed to do, kept my nose clean, and did the stuff. Actually, made some rank for a minute. Did well and everything. All through Tet. When Tet was over, and other recruits started coming in, I noticed that a lot of them were getting the good jobs. They were white. They were getting the jobs in the office and doing stuff, and we were still cleaning latrine pits. So I was very naive about stuff, and I had never been confronted with racism right up close the way it is in the military. So I went and I expressed myself to the first sergeant, like, well, I thought we was going to get these jobs, and now all these other guys are coming in and whatnot. They didn't particularly care for me, They certainly don't want anybody addressing authority in any kind of way. You just do what you're told. So you're not supposed to say anything, but I did. Naively, I didn't know. So I began to put a target on my back. And, as things got worse, things began to get very, very heated in the company areas as it relates to race relations and things like that. There were all kinds of stuff that happened. The first time I ever got shot at by an American soldier was Christmas Eve, 1967. There was a fight, and we didn't know about it. We went over to a hooch is I know you know what it is, but a hooch for somebody that doesn't know is a place where, it's like a barracks. We went over to somebody's barracks. We didn't know that we had heard he had some fight or something, so we went over to check on one of our buddies, see what was going on. So while we were standing there talking to him, we could hear a gun being locked and loaded. You guys are military guys, so that's a sound you don't, you know what that sound is. So immediately we hit the ground, and somebody opened up automatic fire on us. And it was a American soldier. It was a guy that was in the fight. He got upset and came back, and he shot at us. Matter of fact, it seemed like I got shot at more by American soldiers than by Vietnamese. Which I know it sounds crazy, but there were a lot of things that happened in the rear that people didn't talk about. Coincidentally, what happened for me in Vietnam was that you know, they sort of made me a marked man. So they would do things like, you know, how important is that? Like a movie would be like, wow, we could see a movie. They would say, oh yeah, we would show you a movie, but Private Peyton messed up, so it ain't gonna be no movie.
Mm.
So you know, the men didn't think kindly of that, and there were a lot of people that really didn't like me for them very reasons. And I was attacked a few times, you know, by soldiers, which I retaliated, of course.
So they punished the whole unit and blamed you?
Yeah, well, yes,
Just,
what they did, right? That's
just for
what.
just for speaking up.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
You know, it got to be so bad, you know, because we had like, you know, hooch was with you with your friends, so there was like a black hooch. It was a, you know, hooch was with people that you could identify with, and so we had a. So what they did was they put me in a redneck hooch, and I had an incident in there where a guy put up the Confederate flag, and it just so happened I was sort of laying there, laying on my bunk. I was here, you know, I wasn't really paying, but I kept hearing this tap, 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 tap. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And I looked up, and I swear to goodness, between my bunk and his bunk, he had a big Confederate flag. And I was like, and without even thinking about it, I just reached up and snatched it down, and I tore the flag. Oh my God. Thought World War III was going to happen. My daddy gave me that flag. My daddy, my daddy gave me that flag. And, you know, so, you know, E7 came in there. And he tried to explain to me. I said, "Man, listen, I thought we was in the United States Army, not the." He said, "Yeah, well, it's just a symbol. It don't." I said, "That's bullshit." You know. But anyway, I created a lot of problems.
Do
Uh, for
do
me,
you
what
recall
happened?
anything happening or being said around the assassination of Dr. King?
Sure. Well, I was going to get to that. There were a lot of what happened was during the assassination of Dr. King. Um, we weren't allowed to go. There was only two black people could be together. Only two black soldiers could be together at the same time. They wouldn't allow us to congregate. So when Martin Luther King came down, they had an edict that only black soldiers couldn't get together. In the meantime, the white soldiers were up at the EM club drinking beer and doing all that stuff, but we couldn't go up there. We had to be segregated in that way,
Mm.
and that was one part of the situation that you know, created a lot of animosity and stuff with the soldiers. Eventually, what happened for me is I went AWOL and away without leave, and I went down into Saigon, and I stayed in Saigon, and I stayed down there for a while. Stayed with a family I knew. I had been hustling and stuff like that. I don't want to get into all the things I was doing, but I was doing a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't really that you're supposed to do, you know, in order to get revenue. So I was doing some black market stuff and everything. But anyway, I was down there, and eventually I got caught, and I had 4 court-martials in Vietnam for various different things. And I went to the stockade, you know. So you know, and I think he was. I think Harvey said he saw a film I was in about Sir No Sir, which talked about a lot of issues. But one of the things was uh, the rebellion in the stockade, and that was a. It was terrifying and adrenaline, whatever you want to call it. It was, you know, chaotic and confusing and just a lot, you know. Soldiers had talked about, I didn't believe them. First of all, I had been in the stockade for a while, and I had sort of moved into minimum, what they call minimum security. I didn't believe they. I heard they were going to do something. And you know, guys talk about stuff, which, hey, you know, but you know, you don't never say, oh yeah, no, oh yeah, yeah, man, yeah. So they asked me to do something, which I did. I'm not going to really get into all the stuff I did, but I did do something to aid in that situation. And sure enough, man, I halfway forgot about what happened, and all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. It was done that night between when the guards were changing. They had already made plans, and people went, wow, this had a revolt, man. Things were very, very bad in the stockade in Long Bend. It was, first of all, stockade looked like prisons in America, 99% black. And most of the young people in there were in there for petty bullshit things like disobeying orders or something like that, some kind of stuff or whatever. There wasn't no real serious criminals like murder or anything like that. It was just a lot of more of you're not obeying what we want you to do. We're going to get you in shape. We're going to get you back in shape, kind of stuff.
Disciplinary kind of issues.
Yeah, disciplinary stuff. So, yeah, a lot of things happened during that period. Some people lost their lives. The place went up. You said, Harvey, you said you never heard about it, huh?
No, never heard of one. Was that in
Did
'68?
you hear about it, Jim?
No, never heard about it.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
They kept it out of the news.
Yeah, they kept it out of the news, as well as they keep so much stuff away from.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The military is very, very, you don't hear, just like you don't hear about the rapes and the different things that happen in the military towards women, the violence towards women in the military, and all these different things. They keep that up because if they started bringing that up, recruitment would be very difficult. So we have to make sure that we can recruit these young minds and give them some kind of false equivalent to make them think that their life is going to be better by going to die for something that they don't even know what they're dying for.
How big was the Long Bend stockade?
It's hard to say. It was the biggest stockade in the area. I don't know. That's a good question. How many? It had to be 2,000 people in there, I think.
Jesus,
maybe.
see, yeah, I didn't even know. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that there was a Long Bend. I didn't even know that there were stockades with this many people in Vietnam.
Yeah, but we called it. They call it Long Bend LBJ, Long Bend Jail. You know what I mean? LBJ, yeah, LBJ, Long Bend Jail. Right. Yeah, like it's hard for me to tell exactly how many, but they had some very, very tough stuff. They had what they call the box. And if you go to the box, which I've been to the box, it's just like you see in these. It ain't quite as bad as Cool Hand Luke. The Cool Hand Luke thing when he went, but it was on that same level where you're isolated. You're in a very small confined space. You get very low rations. You only get like water and lettuce or some stuff. You don't get no regular chow. And what was happening in Vietnam, like I told you about black market stuff, the cooks and the people in Vietnam, the guys that control a lot of the stuff, were selling it, and they were giving emergency food to the inmates. So they were selling the fresh stuff, everything, the good stuff was being sold, and a lot of the emergency stuff like powdered eggs and stuff like that we were getting, and it was getting to be people were just irritated, with all that, and the racial situations had played a part in terms of like how people felt they were being treated. And you have to remember that people were coming in. This is the beginning of the Black Power movement when people were coming in from the states and talking about what was going on, and this and that, and we had we all had the ritualistic handshakes, the DAP, what we call the DAP, which gave us some kind of solidarity. Like you couldn't leave a group of black soldiers unless you gave everybody the DAP. That was just like a protocol, to keep things together. So, yeah. So after the riot, I had been, like I said, I was stationed on Long Bend, so my unit came and got me. They had me out in what they call Big Red. Big Red was the workstation that most people went to in the stockade. It was no shade. We call it Big Red because the sun, and you fill sandbags. And you had to drive, you had to fill sandbags all day. And it was a certain amount of sandbags they wanted you to fill. The guards were very, some guards were okay. Some gods were just like, hey, I just got to do it. And then some gods were very punitive. And there was a few gods. There was a god, I'm not going to mention his name, but people were like, man, we know where you live, man. We know you're from. I tell you, he was from Baltimore. We know you from Baltimore, and there's people in here from Baltimore, and you're gonna be dealt with when you get back to the world. When you're in Vietnam, you talk about leaving, going back to the world. So that was that kind of stuff. I myself had an incident with somebody did something to me, and I knew he was from my neighborhood. I knew his cousins. His cousins lived in the project with me, and he was from Jersey. I knew he was from Jersey. I said, man, you're from my neighborhood, man. Why would you do this here? I'm gonna see you when you get home. Yeah, okay. I did see him. There was another incident. He, nothing happened, but I'm just saying that he was terrified when he saw me. But the bottom line is it changes you as a person. I go in, I'm very naive about something, a young man, and now I got all this anger, violent. I'm very violent now, And see, people don't understand. They sent you to Vietnam to be violent. So it ain't unusual for Vietnamese, for you to be a violent person. Because that's what you do. You get that angst in. And I had the kind of situation where no matter what, I was going to survive. I wasn't going to I don't care what was happening. I was going to come back home. I made that promise to myself. I was going to come back home. So eventually, like I said, I got caught. I went back. They released us to our unit, and I was done doing anything for the military. I just sort of hung around. I didn't go to no work assignments and nothing like that. I sort of hung around. I was like a real outlier and whatnot. And they put in they built a new stockade, and then they built the thing called Silver City. Did you ever hear Silver City?
No.
Okay. Silver City is in Vietnam was Carnex's. You know what Carnex is?
No.
Carnex is the metal shipping containers.
Okay. Yeah.
They painted them silver.
Yeah.
And that's where they were used as holding cells.
Good Lord.
And so you know what they got like in the heat of the sun, what it was like, and you know what it was like at night.
Yep.
This is U.S. military. So, Silver City, which, and I had an incident, you're going to probably laugh at this. In Vietnam, water is always a premium. And like when you go to your company, you want to take a shower. If you don't get to the showers quick enough, you might run out of water, because it's a water tank they fill up. So one night I went to take a shower and there was no water. So now I'm out here with my soap. I got my towel. I got my soap dish in my hand with my soap and everything. And so what I decided to do, I said, well, listen, I'm out here this far. Companies were like, I was right next to another company. So we walked, was far to another company to see if they had water. Yeah, I wasn't by myself. There was somebody else with me. So they didn't have no water. Now I'm halfway in this other company. I said, okay, we're going to go down to, I forgot the name of the company. We're going to go down to this company and go to water. So anyway, I went down to the company and, I'm taking a shower. I thought they had water, right? So I'm taking a shower. I'm all soaped up. So this guy walks in and he's like, hey, where you from? I said, yeah, I'm taking a shower, man. What difference does it make, man? Like basically, I don't know, Anyway, I'm taking a shower and everything. He leaves abruptly. He leaves. So I'm here taking a shower. All of a sudden, the MPs come. I'm like, what the hell? I'm in the officer's shower. And that was a full bird colonel. And I basically told him to go F himself, in short words. I didn't know. So they lock me. They take me in my towel and all this stuff to the provost. And I end up going into, Silver City for a couple of days. I didn't stay long. But the story is that, like, hey, it was like just a comedy of errors, some things that happen, man, that you just never think about would happen to you, So
So,
eventually, huh?
tell us about uh, your activities once you got out, and about meeting Dave Klein, which is really
Okay, well, what happened was when I got out, um, what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah, they came and got me and gave me. They just came and picked me up one day, and I was discharged from the service. I had a general discharge. I got out the service, and then for about 10 or 15 years, man, I was out on the street hustling, doing things. Man, I became addicted. I was all, I was homeless. I did all the things that, unfortunately, many guys that go to war come back and do. And finally, my final run. I had went to the VA one time for treatment, but it was really just to sort of make somebody else happy. It wasn't for me. It's like, oh, I'm going to act like I'm going to get this right. But anyway, to make a long story short, um, I went back to the VA the last time, which was June the 3rd to be 37 years clean. I have 37 years clean. So,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
yeah.
we just do it a day at a time. Just for the day, I'm okay. So there was a guy named Clarence Fitch who was at the VA, and as I started going to meetings and stuff, he was in the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous (NA) and 12-step program, and I started going to meetings. He knew I was a veteran, and he started saying, yeah, man, we're trying to do this and that. And I had some kind of political understanding, but not on the level that Clarence had. Clarence was like really my mentor into understanding what was going on, what vets were going through, and what was happening, not only locally, but globally, So through Clarence, I met David Klein. And did you know Dave, Jim?
I did not get a chance to meet David. No. So
And you never met him either, Harvey?
No, I saw that he was actually president of Veterans for Peace for
Yeah.
2000 to
Yeah. He was very,
2006.
he was trying to pull me in to do, like they went to Vieques and different places. I was like,
Yeah.
man, I'm chilling for a minute, the work
mhm.
that he, but I mean, this amazing individual, Clarence and David were, they gave me all the information. I mean, they just gave me stuff, points and different things about what was happening, what was going on with veterans, what's going on with the military, how they do things. We went to schools and we talk about our experiences and what the military is really like, something like we're going to do, Harvey, on the 23rd. And, it was just like, wow. So we started traveling. So for actually, Clarence got sick and Clarence got AIDS. And it was very, devastating for me, devastating for most of us. All of us, he got AIDS, and I worked with a lot of AIDS people that had AIDS at the time. I started working in treatment and addiction treatment during around that period of time when he passed away. But Dave was around, so Dave and I we went and we started doing school stuff and speaking different places. We spoke at all the major colleges, Columbia and NYU and everything. And then there was a mission going to Vietnam. So Dave and I went back to Vietnam. And we
Wow.
went with a couple of we went with two soldiers, two vets from out of the Midwest, one from Rockville, Illinois, and I think one from Milwaukee. Their names escape me right now. But we went back to Vietnam and we went to try to begin to have the United States normalize relationships with Vietnam. At that time, there was no normalization of relationships. So we went all through Vietnam. We went to Hanoi. We flew into Hanoi. And that was like scary as hell, because as you fly in, you see the bomb craters filled with water. And you're saying to yourself, I got a lump in my throat. Man, what are these people going to do to me once, because I represent probably somebody that killed their family or killed their folks. So they're gonna, how are they gonna embrace us? Well, let me tell you, man, when we landed there, they were like really glad to see us. They treated us. What I got out of that, and this is something that's helpful to both of you guys, is that the war for them was over. They moved on with their lives. Americans are still fighting the war. A lot of veterans were still fighting the war, but they moved on. So they opened up. They welcomed us with open arms. I saw Ho Chi Minh in Hanoi in the mausoleum where they have them laid out.
Yeah. Wow.
Which was like, wow. Yeah. I mean, that was like, wow. See Ho Chi Minh and all that. And we met with all these Vietnamese soldiers, because we're trying to make relations with them as well. Well, anyway, we had an incident. We went to a place where they call a Black Virgin Mountain. And there was a commandant there that, to the surprise of our interpreter, he invited us to lunch, right? And so we were very taken by that. So on our way there, Dave had fought in that area, Dave Klein. And as we were riding there, he started, looking around. And then he said, this is a good place for ambush. This way, man, they might be this is a good place for ambush. They could be. I said, wait a minute. I tried to talk him down. Hey, Dave, did that. Yeah, he had a flashback. And, I was able to talk him down and, but it was scary. It was scary because you could see he was living the terror in his head. And I've seen that time and time again with veterans. So we get to have this dinner and we're talking, interpreting stuff. And guess what we find out? Dave and the commandant were fighting in the same battle.
Okay.
They had one part of the mountain, they had one part, and Dave's company had the other part, and they talked about that. And then at the end, we embraced. It was just a wonderful kind of thing that happened. So we went all through Vietnam. We went to gynecological hospitals where we saw the effects of Agent Orange on children. And you could see that women went full term with babies, and they delivered things that looked like sponges, or you saw babies with 3 heads and babies with arms coming out of their chest. These fetus of these babies. It was just a horrible thing. And it gives you some more insight on what actually happened in Vietnam and the terror of Agent Orange and the kind of things they did to the Vietnamese people, and stuff like that. So that was something. And one of the things that happened with me is that when I was up north, I don't know if I was in Cu Chi or one of them places, because we went to the tunnels of Cu Chi. I don't know if you ever heard of that, the tunnels of Cu Chi. Yeah, we went to the tunnels of Cu Chi, we went to the place. Anyway, I saw a black kid, and I was like, damn, black kid, and it's registered in my mind and whatnot. But anyway, when I went back to Saigon, and we stayed at the government guest house down in Saigon, it wasn't Ho Chi Minh City, or what, I don't know now, I don't know if they changed the name yet or whatever. But anyway, we were in Saigon, and I saw this Amerasian kid, and he confronted, he came up and talked to me, this, that, and the other. So I said, listen, man, I'm on my way to a meeting because we met with some vets. And so we got to meet in a meeting with veterans, right, from Vietnamese vets. And so, certainly we brought up the thing of the MIA, because you see the black flags, MIA and all that, and and when we said, yeah, what about our MRI? What the Vietnamese soldiers told us? So we got $1 million MIA.
Yeah.
We got $1 million MIA. We got $1 million MIA. Huh?
They just stayed.
Yeah, we got $1 million MIA.
Yeah.
So, I know it's important to you, but, it's ludicrous to think that as poor as the Vietnamese country was, that we're going to keep some people here and feed them and all that stuff. Nah, that's not the case. And so, but they have a thing called the Joint Task Force, all of which would go out to sites where they said they might find maybe a downed plane or something like that, and find the remains of anybody or whatever. So they still have to look for MIAs, even though they know that the slim to no chance of them finding anybody. But that's the way it is. I want to know who gets the money, who gets the money for the flags, who gets the money for all the stuff that is raised in the name of these folks. And see, that's another issue that warmongers and war people have done. They turn these things into money-making opportunities for themselves, and none of it never gets to the veteran or the person that really needs the help. As we know what happened to the Wounded Warrior Project. I know you heard about it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an ongoing thing, because many veterans don't have, or for whatever reason, they don't have the ability to do the accounting and look at the books. They take people at their word, and people give money thinking that there's gonna be some viable stuff happening, and there's a lot of stuff. So that's what So Dave and I, man, we did things. We went down to the Congressional Black Caucus. We was one of the congresswomen invited us down to talk about the issues with the Congressional Black Caucus, where I met John Lewis, and I think I met Dick Gregory, and Martin Luther King III was there and stuff like that. So we did a lot of things. We did stuff. So that was that. And then when I got back home, we started working and telling people about what we did. And then a gentleman named Matt Meyer, who was another also person that has gave me a real historical point of view for peace, but also a current point of view of peace action and peace activities. He was with the War Resistors League, and that's how I got involved with the War Resistors League. He came to me and asked me if I would go to South Africa, during apartheid. And, I said, let me think about it. And I did. I was very naive in the sense that I knew something about it, but I didn't know to the depths of what was really, this whole thing was all about. But I didn't want to. You had a question?
I'm sorry.
No.
I just wondered if this was at the time when Mandela was still in prison.
Yes, it was. It was the time Mandela was still in prison. So, because right. So anyway, I go to South Africa. We had plenty of meetings. I met with the ANC. I met with the PAC, ANC, African National Congress, Pan African Congress, who were very big, political parties in South Africa at the time. And because I wanted to make sure that I had their permission to go to South, because they were like telling Americans don't really go to South Africa, not for tourism, especially African Americans, don't for tourism and stuff. But they said I need to go because they needed somebody to bring back firsthand information that wasn't. So which I did. And so I went all over South Africa. I spoke all over. I spoke at Witwatersrand University, Stellenbosch. I went to Grahamstown. I was in Natal. I was in Pietermaritzburg, the capital. I was in Cape Town.
Greg, when you were talking to these people, what were you talking about?
Well, see, what happened was we linked up with a group called the ECC, End Conscription Campaign, a bunch of young white men, young kids that refused to go into the South African Defense Force. So I came to support them in a sense to let them know what war was really like, and that their course of action was a valid action. Plus, they didn't want to fight in Namibia. They didn't want to do the kind of things, police the townships, which if you join the military, that would be part of your job. So they came out against that, So that's what it was. And many of them were going to jail and stuff like that. There was a guy named Charlie Bester who was locked up. There were a lot of internal heroes. That was another piece. I didn't realize when I went to South Africa that there were whites involved the way they were in the anti-apartheid movement, and that many of them were giving their lives themselves and put their lives on the line. While I was there, a young attorney named Daniel Webster was assassinated. And Daniel Webster was part of a group of attorneys that represented detainees, like another people that were detained. Well, and at that time in South Africa, I could walk. They could walk up to me and just take me up the street and don't give me no reason. They just can whatever. They didn't have to give me a reason, and they can keep me almost indefinitely, just like that, with no. And nobody could say, your family didn't know where you was. Nobody knew where you. I mean, they had that kind of thing going on. So, um, and they had a big march, which I marched in after he got killed, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was very scary because my wife heard somebody got assassinated in South Africa, and she thought sure it might be me, which and that was another thing too. Tremendous amount of stress and pressure because so much, that they're paying attention, they know where you are and stuff like that. And, there's things. I'll give you a little quick story. I spoke at P.W. Botha's alma mater, Stellenbosch University, which was that was the the Afrikaans University.
Mm-hmm.
So I spoke there, and when I went on campus, which was really eerie, I saw my name on a big placard and all this stuff, and everywhere I went, they had my name and everything up, which was like, wow. But I'm speaking to a group of young students and everything, and I'm telling my experiences, and we're sure sharing something. And in the middle of me talking, and see, people told me, you better be careful when you go to Stellenbosch because that's where the nationalists and I mean that's the university. So you better be really careful because no telling what may happen. So as I'm speaking, I hear all this commotion. I hear trumpets in the background, dun, 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 and all this kind of commotion and all these people, and I'm getting nervous. I'm looking for the exits. I'm still looking for the exits. I mean, like, hey, I'm looking around, and so when I get finished. I get a nice reception, but a young woman comes up in Afrikaans and starts speaking to the audience in Afrikaans. Blah, blah, blah. So I don't know what the hell is going on. I'm sitting back. So my friend, and this is another thing. When I went to South Africa, there was a guy named Howard Clark. He works for War Resistors International, and he's a native of Britain. He knew every freedom movement, every group, and he knew everything. I got a real education on every freedom movement and different things, dates, times, places, things that happened in South Africa. So he really gave me a real good education. So he was sitting next to me. So I asked him, I said, what the hell's going on? Oh, he said, excuse me. He said, they're protesting. They want the rock band to come on campus, and they won't let the rock band come on campus. So that's what they're protesting. They're not protesting me, which was a good thing. But yeah, so I went all over, and it was, went in the townships. I was in Soweto. I was in Soweto in the middle of the night. I see how people were living. It was earth shattering. I mean, just so much stuff. I mean, too much stuff to talk about in a few, but there's so many things that happened. But I was sitting in Mandela's house in Soweto. Matter of fact, when I was there, they started the talks with Mr. Mandela about him being released. So as we were sitting there, they were talking about, yeah, they're going in to make talks and they're going to release Mandela and all this. This was the spring before Mr. Mandela. Mr. Mandela was released in February, and this was the spring before that. So I want to say that I think I worked towards his release, because we were doing all these things and whatnot. But I met some very amazing people. I met people that really put their self on the line because, in South Africa, I mean, like, hey, I don't know, so many, deaths and, your massacres and different things that they did. The authorities had total upper hand. And I had an incident where I was taking some pictures, which I stopped doing. And somebody asked me, "What are you going to do with the picture?" So I said, "I'm not going to do anything with the picture." But the way he asked me, I knew it was like, "What are you going to do with that picture?" I'm not going to do anything with that picture. He said, "Let me explain to you. We're meeting here is illegal. This is an illegal meeting. If there is a picture of this meeting and it gets in the wrong hands, we all will be detained. So we're going to ask you, if you take any pictures, do not get them developed in South Africa." So,
Wow.
yeah, so because like that. Now, let me tell you something. I came home, I had about 8 rolls of film. I'm a good photographer, trust me. And I put them into my lab where I put my film, and when I got the film back, the lab was in Kearney, but when I got the stuff back in the mail, it was coming from LA or something. Guess what? I got 8 reels of film with nothing on it.
Oh man.
Nothing on it. Right.
What happened?
What happened was that the State Department, they got them pictures.
Wow.
State Department got. I mean, listen, I'm a black dude. I'm going to South Africa. I've been to Vietnam, which is a communist country. I'm on the radar. They know about me. I spoke at universities and stuff like that, so they know who I am. They know what goes on, and they, I haven't committed any crimes, but they're going to make sure they do the right intel. Because I could be who knows. So I make sure I don't take anything away from anywhere I go but myself.
There you go.
So, so that was, that was South Africa. And then, I've been all over the planet just doing stuff. I've been to other parts of Africa and all through Europe, different things, meeting with groups, working with peace groups and stuff like that.
This mostly with War Resistors League or other groups as well?
War Resistors International primarily, but when you do that, you interface with International Friends of Reconciliation. You intersect with Greenpeace. You intersect with people from people belong to multiple groups. You intersect with people from the Anglican Church as a peace group. So you meet all these different people from various groups, right? But mainly War Resistors International.
And Veterans for Peace by any chance?
And veterans, I didn't do, to be honest with you, I was a member of Veterans for Peace. Dave wanted me to be more involved, but at the time I was like, nah, I don't feel like it, David. Like he wanted me to go to Vieques. He really wanted me to go to Vieques and stuff like that. But I was like, nah, I need a break, man. I don't want to, and whatnot. But I joined the organization out of respect for him and out of respect for what you guys do. So, and whatnot. But I wasn't doing a lot of veteran. And, a lot of the work I did was Vietnam Veterans Against the War was with the schools and going to different places and things like that,
Tell us about, you told me when we were speaking the other day that you had met Muammar Gaddafi.
Yeah, I met Muammar Gaddafi. I went to a peace conference during the same time that they were having a peace conference in Brazil. They had a green conference in Brazil. And quite naturally, I think they excluded Gaddafi. So he had something similar to that, where activists from Europe and from Africa and Asia came together in Libya. And during that period of time, Libya, you couldn't fly into Libya. You couldn't fly into Libya. So had to fly to Malta, take a ferry over to the Gulf of Sirte and go into Libya. And very interesting, man, because you meet all these different people that you normally wouldn't meet. And I met some great people from Britain and other places and stuff like that. We were there for about a week. And I think maybe on the third day, we were going to break for lunch. And they said, no, don't break for lunch. We're going to have a guest. Well, basically, we're going to hold lunch up. And Muammar Gaddafi walked in. So he basically talked about the myths of how he's being misrepresented in the West, and how some of the things that he did. And he talked about the work he did within Libya in terms of um, education and things like that, taking the oil money that he had and really putting it in the community and building things up. And they had great plans for irrigations for part of the desert and stuff like that. So there were a lot of things. He also showed us where he got bombed out, where they bombed his house, where his baby was in the room and all that and whatnot.
Killed her.
Excuse me?
They killed his daughter, isn't that
Yeah,
right?
they put us on a bus. He showed us that. Yeah. Yeah. So what happens is I said to myself, I said, well, I'm in the same room with Gaddafi and, shake his hand and all that stuff. I said, I know I couldn't probably get 10 feet close to Bush. You know what I mean? But I think what happens is, and this is what happens to us as a people, the propaganda machine. And when we don't like people, we really put up a strong propaganda machine about, yeah, I'm not saying that Gaddafi's hands was clean or anything like that, but I know enough about politics to know that as Americans, our hands are not clean, that we've done some dastardly things over the course of time. And, I'm not holding up one against the other. I'm just saying that, all the stories need to be told so people know where things are and who's doing what. So that was interesting. I was in Belfast, and that was another situation where being in Belfast and understanding what the IRA wanted to meet with people in the peace movement because they wanted to. One in four men in Belfast had been in prison for long lengths of time. They knew their community was broken up. They wanted to break that chain of violence and begin to start a different thing. I just missed uh, uh, Jerry Adams by a day, but we went and we met with the folks. One thing about the IRA, a couple of things that stuck out to me. These guys went to prison, right? And they stayed for years. But guess what? When they came out of prison, they had degrees. Some had master's degrees, some had undergraduate degrees, because they said that in order to change their community, they had to educate their community and had to educate themselves. And so that's what they did. So they came out. See, they still, even though they were in prison, they still were soldiers in the IRA. And so that was the thing they're trying to do. They're trying to figure out ways to conflict resolution and do different things differently so that they can break the chain for their kids. It's funny, you go into Belfast and, I'm a big black guy and I go into Belfast and I've been in the places where I know, well, I'll tell you, anyway, I go in there, nobody gives me a double take. I'm like, damn, usually I go someplace, somebody I look around and say, where's this guy come from? You know what I mean? You don't go to Belfast unless they know you're coming. You can't get into Belfast unless they know who it is they're going to let in, or else you don't get in. It's just that simple. You're not going to get into Belfast like that. So they knew we were coming. They knew how many we were. When we got out, I was coming from Dublin. So when we got out the train, there were 2 cabs waiting for us to take us to a place where we met with some people, and then we went into the IRA office and talked and had it. It was a very wonderful visit, very good.
Wow. What year was that, Greg?
Oh God, that was I think maybe early 2000, something like that, maybe 2000.
So
The
Good Friday Agreement had already been.
No, they have been working on it.
Yeah.
I think that if I'm not mistaken, that not too long after that they came up with the agreement.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so that was it. But yeah. Oh wow, what I did.
Well, talking about meeting Gaddafi and whatever he did in Libya. Look at Libya now since NATO got.
I don't want to talk. Like the thing is that again, the assassination that was done and the way it was done.
Horrendous.
Right. You just, and our hands are all over that. And, it's like, hey, we want control of the oil. We want the resources. If anybody bucks us, then there's going to be issue with that. And we're going to make sure that they don't have a voice and that we vilify them And I guess, certainly everybody was upset over the Lockerbie shooting down and whatnot. Like I say, I know there's nobody has their hands clean when they do stuff, but we know and people know that there's always more to the story than just what we hear, because we don't really get. That's one thing is I imagine, I'm assuming both of you guys have been out the country, and you know that the kind of news and information you get while you're away from America is not the same information you get while you're in America. It's different.
Yep.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think it's gotten worse.
Yeah, well, it's about propaganda machine. I mean,
Yeah.
everything we see on TV, I mean, every channel has the same story. It's just like Fahrenheit 451. I mean, what are you talking about? Everybody, and we're talking about violence. And one of the things we talk about when we start talking about violence is how people are very upset about the violence, the guns, and all that stuff. What people are not talking about is this. We know a lot about these groups and everything. We don't know nothing about. You never hear gun manufacturers' names being mentioned. You never hear ammunition manufacturers' name being mentioned. You don't know what their output is. How do they make? How many guns do they make a year? What happens? I'm watching this thing about the narco wars in Mexico, and come to find out that they get all their guns from the United States. The AK-47s are made in the United States. These assault weapons. They're all made. And so, if you know anything about what's been happening in Mexico for the last 15 years, 20, there have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people being killed by these weapons that are American made, that come from America. Or you see things that are fighting in the South Sudan or Somalia, and you see kids, they look like they haven't eaten in 3 days, but they got a bandolier on and a gun. No food. So where are these weapons coming from? How come we're not talking about these weapons? Every show on TV is based in some violence. Is all police and military shows, all about violence, stuff like that. I mean, our kids are being inundated. Never, don't show a breast on TV. Oh my God, if you show a breast, it might be the end of the world. But we can show somebody's getting their head cut off or getting their head blown up, and that's okay. And so we have a real issue here in America with violence and stuff. We don't want to deal with it. On the other hand of that, I think that there are a lot of young folks now that are beginning to make better choices. They're looking at things better. There are things that they're beginning to recognize, as we were at this meeting the other night, about the environmental impact and the defense budget and what goes on with these resources and all these different things, and they're beginning to make talk about it and begin to make different choices, different kind of better choices, and they have more information than I've ever had. So and that's what I really admire these folks, because I think that they're thinking for themselves and they're moving in a direction that they want to save the planet. And they know that, like, hey, it's just like, say, for instance, there's a lot of resistance. There are a lot of people that are conscientious objectors to the war in Ukraine. And then, yeah. Why is Ukraine in America? Because they're making money on these weapons. Weapons are our number one export, as you guys already know. What do you say, Harvey?
So we don't hear much in the media about conscientious objectors in Ukraine.
No, you don't hear that. Just like when I was in Bosnia during the war. Did y'all know that? Did you know that?
You told me that, yeah.
Yeah, I was in Bosnia. Not only was I was in Bosnia, I was in Belgrade, I was in Serbia, I was in Hungary, and then I was in Croatia.
Now, what were you doing there? Were you doing the same piece?
Same thing, working with peace groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are peace groups in all these places. One of the things that happened was a lot of these peace groups didn't understand. A lot of people didn't understand if they went against the government, they thought they were being, unpatriotic, and they couldn't understand that. No, you are patriotic because you're standing up for what's right, not necessarily agreeing with the government that is doing something wrong. And it was a different kind of mindset they had, but like I said, it was some harrowing times too. Different things happened while I was in Serbia. In Croatia, I went to a place called Pančeva, which is outside of It's outside of Belgrade, and I spoke to a group of young people. And I was supposed to spend the night in Pančeva, but they didn't have any room. You have to remember the refugee situation at that time was off the chain. Nobody had a free space anyplace, and the hotel there was a football soccer team, and they took all the rooms in the hotel. So I ended up having to go back to Belgrade in the middle of the night. I had a guy with me named Boyan. He was an interpreter. Boyan has since been missing. Nobody, we're almost sure that, we keep hope open, but no, Boyan disappeared, and there's a guy named Milosevic.
Oh, yeah.
And we were working against them forces, the Milosevic forces and stuff. And we were almost sure that he might have got swept up with that. But, I spent almost a whole night out on the streets of Belgrade because I went back. I didn't have a place to stay. And where I was staying at, I couldn't get in. So I had to, sort of walk around Belgrade. And I dealt with a lot of Roma people, the gypsies and different things at night. It was a kind of harrowing thing. I still had, since I'm from the inner city, I was sort of, I had my guard up, kind of speak, but very interesting, man. A lot of homeless people, a lot of stuff, a lot of angst and stuff that happens, man, because of war and all the displacement of folks.
Was this during the active warfare over there?
Yeah, they were fighting.
Yeah.
And so then I went into. I took a train into. A couple of things happened. One thing is when I was leaving. A lot of stories in between. I left from a place called Novi Sad, which is in Serbia, and I caught a bus. I got on the bus, and they wouldn't let me on the bus, and they kept telling me to get off the bus, and I couldn't speak the tongue, and the guy with me that put me on the bus couldn't speak English. Anyway, to make a long story short, they thought I was African. The bus couldn't go straight from Serbia to Croatia; it had to go through Hungary. And so you needed a visa if you were African, but if you weren't, American passport, that would be good enough, which I had American passport. And so that old blue passport means something when you leave here, trust me. So when I went to Hungary, I saw something. I saw a group of kids get off a bus, a bunch of little kids. I mean, 5 to 7, holding hands. Quiet, not a word, not a peep, not a laugh, not a giggle. It was so eerie. You never seen a bunch of little kids and they're not saying it. They're going to the bathroom where they're going, not saying anything. Come to find out, these kids came from a place called Vukovar, where they bombed back to the Stone Ages and killed all their parents. They were homeless kids. They were kids, often kids with no parents that experienced the war, and you could see the trauma on their face. These are things that people don't understand about what happens in war and stuff like that. I think that some of the reporting I've seen done, they did a pretty good job of showing some sites that you normally wouldn't see on that, like people being dead in the street and stuff like that. So when I get to Zagreb, I'm going to a peace center, and it was a whole long story about that. But one little interesting thing to talk about Serbia and Croatia. I met a guy in the train station. There's a whole story about it, but I met some people in Serbia, and I had them sign. I had a little notebook. I had them sign their address and everything, name and address, and notebook in case I want to get back in touch with them. When I left the train station, there was a guy that was from Croatia, and he was like, "Oh, he had been to New York." He said, "Oh, yeah, let me give you my address and everything." I said, "I'll give you my address." So I opened up my book, and I showed him where he could sign his name. He's like, "I can't sign that paper." I said, "What?" He said, "I cannot sign that paper." I said, "Why can't you sign that paper?" "My enemy's name is on that paper, and I can't sign the paper." I just flipped the page, and he signed the paper. He wouldn't sign next to a Serbian's name. He wouldn't sign underneath the Serbian's name. That's how, that's how they felt about it. It was just one of the things that, And these people look like it's the same thing with what's going on in Russia. Usually you're fighting people that don't look like you. These people look like these are some of them are probably even family. In Belgrade, not Belgrade, in Ukraine, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's them issues, it's all the same. And that's what happens when you shake it out. No matter what the conflict or whatever it is, it's all wrong and it's all the same. And it comes down to young people dying for things they don't even understand. And older folks sending them there and stuff. I was on a panel one time on a thing, and a guy said something about, going to war. And I said, yeah, well, if you believe in it so much, I said, oh, you have children? He said, yeah. So I have 3 girls. I said, well, why don't you send them? Then it was a pause. Oh, it's a volunteer army. It's a volunteer. No, why don't you send your kid? If you're so gun-ho on war about it, you don't want to send your kids, but you'll send somebody else's kid. You'll send a poor kid that doesn't have any alternatives, somebody else that, you could use for cannon fodder and whatnot. Guys, one of the guys that got killed one of my friends when I grew up with, he was the hope of the whole family. If he would have been able to come back home and get himself together, he had a big family. He had like about 7 or 8 brothers and sisters. He would have been the first one maybe to pull some more, and their whole life could have changed. And without him, all his brothers died early. His sisters died early. They got addicted to drugs. It was like they didn't have anything to look forward to. And that happens a lot of times. There's always a hero, somebody that can make a difference. And because of the way these things are set up, our children are being eradicated with this messed up system called war. Yeah. All over the planet. It's everywhere you go. It's And so I guess what we have to do is continue to do the things we do. Continue to I believe every little bit helps. I also believe this. I think that one of the things is that a lot of times those of us that are activists, we come out, but we don't work in our family sometimes. It's like we got family members that are racist. We got family members that are, and a lot of times we don't really want to work with them, but we're going to save somebody else over here. The reason I started doing this is because there was nobody coming in the Black community talking about some of the things I talked about. There was nobody being read. Like, we didn't get any conscientious rejection stuff. We didn't get any information. There's things like that. When I work with these groups, I also learned how to organize. A lot of these groups had good they organize well. War Resistors League, War Resistors International, VVAW. They're great. Many of us in the African American community didn't have organizational skills or the way to do things. How much time we got?
Oh, we got as much time as you want. I'll just edit it down to make it fit, or I'll do a second.
No, it's okay. But I'm just saying that
editor-in-chief, he'll make it work.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying that what happens is our children, in our community, just weren't being addressed. There was issues that weren't being addressed, and as a result, you had more, disproportionate numbers of young Black kids getting killed in the military, in Vietnam in particular. Mm-hmm. And now we see the same thing happening with the violence on the streets. And we look at the issues in terms of opportunity and stuff like that. It's just like, it's really, really crazy. So we have to fight hard to make sure these resources go, or put a light to it. Do I think anything's going to happen overnight? Of course not. But I think there's some things that have happened that make a difference. And you guys make a difference. We all heads and everything, but like, we make a difference because I think we can plant seeds. And so that's one thing about being an old head. You can plant a seed. You can plant a seed, and I got sons and people, and I don't really try to tell them what to do. I just say, hey, well, did you think about, or did you know, or whatever it is. And I found that that's been very effective. I don't think that you have to beat somebody over the head with your viewpoint.
So is that the approach you and Harvey are going to take when you visit the high schools?
Well, from my experiences, I'm just like Harvey. I'll never tell a kid not to join the military. The military can help some kids. I mean, it might be a good thing. It's just understanding what you're getting into is more important to me. You know, you can. I mean, yeah, you can. And I would have stayed in the military if it wasn't for war. It was a
Yeah.
good, for me. If it wasn't for the war, I might have been a career soldier.
Yeah.
Because the environment was good, all that food wasn't that bad as they say, there were things I traveled, I was going to travel. So yeah, it was exciting and for a young person. But then when the war came, when I went to war, I was like, oh, I don't think I want to do this.
Yeah. Well, those recruiters are going to make all the potential advantages the only thing they hear.
Well, the thing is, and it's changed so much now. They watered down the benefits for veterans. They don't get the same kind of stuff.
Right.
You know, um, this whole thing about free education is a bunch of nonsense.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you don't really get any real transferable skills specifically, you know, when your skills are transferable, usually you come in with some skills prior to being in there that you can take back with you. But they're not training a lot of folks to do different things, especially people that don't have a certain aptitude. And that's something that people don't understand. Yeah, you can say, well, listen, I want to work in counterintelligence. I want to do spy. I want to do whatever it is. Oh, yeah, well, we can send you to school and we can do that. But first, we're going to give you a test. Oh, then pass that test. Only thing we got for you is infantry. And that's what they do,
Yeah.
And once you sign the thing, the contract, that's it.
Uh-oh. Yep.
I quit. I remember one time I told a sergeant in Vietnam, that same one that came in with the flag, I said, I quit. I quit this shit. He said, what? I said, I quit. Yeah, right. You can't quit. Right. And that's what kids don't understand is that Uniform Code of Military Justice is a different thing. It's not the Bill of Rights. Trust me. It's a different animal, and you're gonna be governed by that animal.
Yeah.
So it's different.
They're under no obligation to keep their end of the deal, but you
No, they don't. They don't. Matter of fact, they don't. I mean, like, hey, listen, just like in the video you showed me. I mean, that I was watching. Like the recruiters lie. They all lie.
Yeah.
Because that's what they have to make numbers. It's a number game. They got to get so many people in, so they lie, and that's it. And when you're young and you want to get away from home and you think that this is something good, you lie. I mean, that's what you do. It's like, yeah, you might even lie to them. But yeah, the bottom line is that it always ends up where you're putting your life on the line. It's the armed forces. Them, it's like, hey, right. It's the armed forces. People kind of like, I forget that part about armed.
Yeah.
So it's about guns. And so, yeah, our country is I don't know, some things are very good and some things are very, very sad. Some things are really, really bad. And some stuff is going backwards in terms of some race relations and some things that are happening with people. And a lot of people sometimes are focusing on a lot. Like they got you looking over here with some stuff, but they're doing some dastardly things over here. And you got to understand where, if they got you looking somewhere, you better look behind that or look to the right of that to find out what they're doing. And right now they're doing a heck of a thing with this war machine, and who knows what's going to happen. This war, the escalation can be catastrophic. You know what I mean? And so we got to do the best we can do, fellas, and we're doing it.
Yeah. Where's your next stop? What other country are you heading to? Are you still going to be traveling around?
I'm in London in June. I'm in London. Then I got a trip to Tanzania, East Africa in October. It's more pleasure than work, but there's some things I'll be doing while I'm out in that area.
And this is all with the yeah. No, sorry.
War Resistors International is the thing for London.
Excellent. If people are interested in supporting you, should they go to a website and throw a couple of bucks at them?
I don't have a website. I don't have anything like that. Like for me, a lot of times what happens is I travel, they get, because I had to get some compensation because I couldn't afford, they'll get a grant and the grant will pay my travel and stuff like that. I have no setup. I wouldn't take no money from me. I ain't doing the accounting, you know. Plus, like you want to know who's sending you money.
That's right.
Today, somebody sending you money could be a real problem,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not like that. So no, I don't have any websites set up. I just do what I do. People been, I've been doing this for over 20 years. So people know. I remember I was, a couple of times I was in Vienna, Austria, with deserters and conscientious objectors from the war in Bosnia and all that. And another thing broke out too with a guy that just started having these flashbacks, of the war. And I'm so glad that I was able to keep calm and work on that. And I had some trainings, somewhat training working with addiction and people in crisis that gave me the ability to sort of walk them down. But this begins to be a real problem because I think in the Afghan and war in Iraq, they used a lot of people from National Guard and reserves.
Right.
And these guys are older. See, it took me 15 years to get my head somewhat straight from Vietnam, but I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
These guys are already in their 30s, maybe some early 40s in reserves and whatnot. When they see trauma, who knows how long it's going to take them to get straight. Trauma affects you a lot different when you're 30, 35 than when you're 18 or 19.
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues we have with all these folks. With the amputees and all these things, it's just horrible to see that. I went to a play in New York a while back, and all of a sudden, I saw all these soldiers with amputees, and they were, they got tickets to go see this play as well. But I was like, wow, there was might have been at least 15 or 20 people that had, missing limbs and stuff. I was like, wow. Of course, you know about it isolated when you just see a group of them together, and
Yeah.
that's been, and that's an untold story. Or did you hear the story about the guy that left Iraq and he tried to go home? He lost his leg, IUD, so he went to Walter Reed, and so they gave him a prosthesis and everything. He's trying to go home, and he went to get his last paycheck, and they said no. Can't give you no check. So he said, why? He said, when you left Iraq, you never turned in your gear. So we're keeping your check. So he couldn't get home and see the bureaucracy of the military, even when he called his congressman and all these other people, the military wasn't couldn't say, hey, here's a check. He had to get money from other people and stuff to get home. But how does he feel now that he lost his leg and he can't get home? I mean, that has to do something to your mindset to say, what was this all about? I lost my leg, and they're talking about I didn't turn my gear in, and I can't get home. And this story, I know that's one isolated, but I know there's some other stories like that. Or people looking for, you go to VA looking for health benefits. And I remember when I don't go to the VA because I have good health care from my work. And I don't want to take somebody's spot. But anyway, I know a guy was trying to get Agent Orange thing. They want to know what day you was at, where was you at exactly when you got it, what time of the day it was, and what, what? Who knows? I mean, yeah, right. They want to, right.
Thankfully, they've updated that, and it's a lot easier to get that coverage.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
because at the time, this is early on. This has been years,
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm grateful for that, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, it hurts.
But it
hurts.
takes too much. It's too much of a fight.
Yeah, I mean, a real fight, you got to, blah, 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 blah. Some people got to get an attorney. I mean, it's crazy, but they ain't have no problem sending you now.
Well, that's exactly right.
And no problem sending you. Harvey, you have any questions? What's up? You good? How did I do, Harvey?
I think you've
It was marvelous.
You've given us more than enough for a great show. I'll tell you that. I appreciate your coming on. I didn't really get to do an introduction, but we can splice that up there. How would you like to be introduced?
No, man, just, Greg Payton, Vietnam vet. Nothing really. What happens is, man, I've been fortunate and so many times, but for the grace of God, I'm still able to still do some of the things I do. And I know that, like, hey, there's so many guys I know that haven't had a chance or couldn't do it or didn't make it. A lot of guys in the movement. There's a guy named Mike Gold. Anybody know Mike Gold? Mike Gold was head of the Vet Center for Cooney City University in New York. He was instrumental, and he was another advocate of, for veterans and everything. We would have meetings at his office, and you'd always leave with a pile of papers. He had all kind of articles about what was going on nationally and internationally around these issues. But there's so many fallen soldiers in this movement that, there's some young people coming out that had the Iraqi war vets. I haven't talked to any of them, but one time I was in touch with them against the war. And they had some other folks that, Black Vets for Social Justice was a group in Brooklyn. Have you ever heard of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, Black Vets for Social Justice. I did work with them, and they did, listen, tell you, they've done some remarkable things with housing for veterans, and they run a shelter in Brooklyn. The Armory, they took over the Armory and refitted the Armory as a shelter. They had veteran housing, health care. They've done a wonderful thing with that. A guy named Joe Mushariki was the founder of that, and he was an advocate. He fought hard, and he, he got people together to write the grants and to do different things, and they got people to advocate for them, and that's what you need. You need, and unfortunately, his organization is still. You can look him up on the website, BVSJ, Black Vets for Social Justice. Okay, then. So listen, man. I guess that's about it, bro. Unless you have any other question. What about you, Jim?
Well, I was just curious if you've got a little bit of time.
I'm good.
Because, when you look at the young people that you two are talking to, that I try to talk to, and the young people, and I relate them to when I was young. And I mentioned this to Harvey earlier. When we were that age, the veterans that are equivalent to us now were World War I veterans. And I'm thinking to myself, would I have listened to a World War I veteran and tried to go a different path, would I change anything? And so I'm just curious. And I think you mentioned a little bit about it earlier when you said plant a seed, even though we're older, plant a seed. But do you ever get a little bit of skepticism when you're looking at young people and trying to talk to them about issues and stuff?
But all you can do basically is just point them in the right direction. They can do research and stuff on their own if you tell them where to look. And say, hey, man, don't believe me. Just go look at this here. Check this out. Whatever, And that's what you have to do. I think that, having information to tell them what to do, where to go, and it's on them, whether they want to do it or not. But I think it's important for them to know that two things: don't sign the contract unless you know what you're signing, and make sure that you asked all the questions. And I think one good thing about that film I saw, or which I tell people to, is talk to somebody that's in the service now. Talk to an active duty veteran before you join, and let them know what you feel. Don't just do it, and don't talk to them after you join. No, talk to them before you join. Go and talk to some active and ask them what they think. because I think that's important. Don't worry about my thoughts about. I'm like you said, I'm an old soldier.
Yeah.
Talk to some of these young soldiers and stuff and see what they think, and that'll give you an understanding. I think that's one of the things that's one of the probably best things you can do is talk to a current duty, active duty soldier, and it could be good or bad. I mean, like the way one soldier said, "Hey, his experience with this has been the greatest thing." Like, I mean, I met soldiers that told me I didn't have no shoes until I went to the army.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have no shoes, man. Listen, I didn't have no shoes until I went home.
Yeah, the poverty draft is still very much a factor.
It's right. What are you going to do, man? It's kind of like you want to get away from home. You don't have no job. You have no education. Well, even now in the military, they're not used to be able to hang out in the military. I remember E6 Sergeant was sort of just hanging out, waiting for his retirement. They stopped that.
Right.
You now
You
you're under contract, huh?
Up or out?
Yeah, you're under contract.
Yeah.
My nephew is getting ready to be a full bird colonel. But one of the things he told me was, and he has a double engineering degrees. He's really great guy, airborne, all that stuff. But he was saying that he met a brigadier general, a black one. And the brigadier general was like, every year they make me want to qualify. I got to qualify every year. Like, they give me a year-to-year contract. They're not giving me any, and I don't like it. I don't think there's no stability in it. And I think that's what's happening. The higher you get, if you don't have a specialized thing they really want you to have, then they're going to try to push you out. And they don't want to keep you because they don't want to pay you. Exactly. They don't want to keep you these benefits. They don't want, it's just like any other job now. And a lot of people don't know that. They think, hey, you can go in the military, just hang out. Nope, ain't no more hanging out. And you better have, and unfortunately now they want you to at least have a high school education, and and certainly advanced if you have that. But like, yeah, it's a lot different. But it all boils down to putting your life on the line. You better know what you're putting your life on the line for.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what I think people don't understand that. I remember the first time the first time we went out in Vietnam, we got, like I said, we guarded all the ammunition dumps and stuff. And we went out one night and we came to a clearing on our way to our guard towers. And in the clearing, there were bodies on the road. So there was a guy next to us, we used to call him Preacher, because he had a little Bible. Every time he turned around, he was preaching something, this and that, blah, blah, blah. You're not supposed to load your weapon until you get an order to load put your magazine in your weapon. When we left that clearing, I don't know what happened to the Bible, but the magazine was out. He loaded his weapon, and then they had shooting everywhere, bullets everywhere. I mean, like, out there, and it's raining bullets because they had Puff the Magic Dragon. You ever hear Puff the Magic Dragon? Gunship. I think it had. Yeah, the gunship, Puff the Magic Dragon, gunship, and they doing traces and all that. And so just a lot of stuff. And, I think for me, it was like, wow, this is real. This is serious. This is real. No more training. No more, no. This is people shooting at me and I can't see them, but I hear the bullets. This is real. And I think that's when I think every soldier has a point where the training stops and you realize this is serious stuff. And it shaped me, changed me.
Hopefully we can impress that on the kids at Burke High School when we go there.
Well, we just do the best we can do. I'm not even worried about it. It's like, hey, you show up, do what you can do and keep it moving.
Yeah.
But anyway, fellas,